Hello, welcome to the Bob Reeves Brass live Facebook stream. It's so great to have you here with us today. My name is John Snell, and joining us is special guest, trumpeter, singer, and songwriter, Bria Skonberg. So let's bring Bria in right now. Hi, Bria, how you doing?
I'm fine, everybody. What's the point of playing trumpet if you can't give yourself a fanfare?
Right? Oh, man.
I'm fine.
How are you doing? Like we talked a few weeks ago on the podcast, and I mean things are crazy there in New York. Things are still crazy. So I mean, first things first. I hope you're still healthy and taking care of yourself. Things going okay?
Yep, it's kind of Groundhog Day around here. You know, wake up. As somebody said today to me today on the phone, there are only 3 days: yesterday, today, and tomorrow. So I was like, what did I do? What am I doing today? And what am I working towards? But yeah, no, just fine. Let's say thanks.
Well, before we get going, I want to just thank you again. I mentioned in the podcast, I mean, you're so inspiring, all the stuff you've created since the quarantine. In fact, I was just watching you live on Facebook doing your little impromptu concert. I mean, you're doing so much. So thank you so much for what you're doing, keeping music alive and spreading cheer and doing the thing. So thank you.
Keep this going. It's this sort of connectivity that I'm embracing, and that's really keeping me going during this whole thing.
So we already have Hawaii checking in. Aloha, Mark. So yeah, we are live here with Bria Skonberg. Yes, we are going to have some fun. We have the ukulele, we have piano. Ask Bria anything down in the comment section, and we will ask, and Bria will answer your questions live. Now, we did have some questions come in advance on Instagram. So we'll start with, it's about your last CD, Nothing Never Happens. Mm-hmm. And the question was, how did that CD come about? What was your inspiration?
Oh, thank you for asking about that one. So I have released 6 solo albums, and they're all a big eclectic mix. But this one, I think, is really it feels really personal for me because about just over 2 years ago, I think I got so overwhelmed by the white noise, I call it, of media, etc. I don't have to explain it to you. We all know it. Just everything that was going on in the world before the world shut down, or even now. That I was finding it that I had no time or space to even process what my feelings were on all of those different issues, global issues, social issues, gender issues, etc. So I just started to take myself on a couple of writing retreats, which for me, my favorite way to write is just I need to shut out everything. I need to have total silence. I need to have a clean room and space, musical, physical space, and to sit at a piano and just start to basically feel what wants to come out, or bring my trumpet and give myself space for different things to bubble up. So through that process, I found the songs, Villain Vanguard was one of the first ones that came out. It's an instrumental, fairly charged piece that I think was very inspired by the women's marches. There is Square One, which is a beautiful, melancholic, sort of reflective piece. So Is the Day, I've talked about on my social media channels, is a song that has stuck with me for a long time, but it's just morphed to this depth that just I needed to redo it again. So all that to say, there is a much kind of darker feel, a more moody, there's more tension in the album that is a reflection of kind of things that I was working through, in reflection of what I was taking in. And yet, for me, there's this whole silver lining of hope at the same time, of overcoming those challenges. So that's why the title of the album is Nothing Never Happens. It's a double negative.
My mom's an English teacher, so she's she's at home bending over, keeling over. But yeah, that makes sense.
It's on purpose. Yeah. The phrase came from traveling a lot with bands. And people would go missing, instruments would go missing along the way, and it just seemed like things were really dire. And I just started to say, something will happen. Nothing never happens. That's where the phrase came from. And for now, it just means, remain optimistic. We will get through it. And it, unfortunately, I didn't realize how relevant it would continue to be through all of these things.
Right. So the next question is about your jazz improvisation. Again, came in from Instagram. But hey, ask your questions down in the comments section. If you're watching now, we have people checking in. I love technology. We have Sydney, Australia. I saw Thailand check in, Newcastle, UK. So we're spanning the globe. And we haven't even been here 10 minutes yet. That's amazing. So, but ask your questions. We have Bria right here, and we've done a few of these before. And generally, what happens? This is like being in class. Everyone's shy to ask questions, and then the last 5 minutes they start pouring in. So we have a few that came in advance, but start asking your questions now, and then we can ask them during this this live stream, and more likely to get them answered. So getting back to the question, sorry about that, is about your jazz improvisation and the techniques you learned. Did you do a lot of transcribing of solos, or was it by ear? How did you learn jazz?
Transcribing takes a couple of different forms. And when I was first learning how to improvise, which for me was around 14, kind of late compared to U.S. standards, but I think really understanding what jazz improvising was at that time, my teachers gave me recordings of jazz artists. So I would listen to Louis Armstrong and I would jam along with the recordings. Whether or not I notated it or not, I would try to sing whatever he was doing and then play it back to him. So I kind of amassed some vocabulary that way. I think one of the greatest things was, playing with the combos, especially at that level. It's important, if you can, to just pull together a couple of different people to have a setting that's a little bit more free than, say, a big band setting, so you can really try out some ideas. And it was more so when I got to college where I started to dig into more of the music theory of it, extracting notes from chords. But I had such a strong idea of melody. I grew up in a town that had a festival that focused on the older styles of jazz. So I talk a lot about Louis Armstrong because he had such a big influence on me. But really, New Orleans ensemble jazz playing is an art unto itself. The trumpet plays the melody, the clarinet either harmonizes or plays some kind of obligato stuff at an upper register. The trombone is doing what we call tailgate and filling in the spaces too. Which is actually just such a sophisticated art form of everybody filling in the harmony at the same time, using rhythm to keep the pulse moving, always honoring the melody, and trumpet players embellishing it just a little bit. So, I think those sensibilities are what gave me the big foundation of especially rhythm, a good sense of time, melodic phrasing, and then again having a smaller band sort of place to where I could develop it before digging, and then consequently digging into the harmony tree that continues to grow.
Great answer and good insight there. Let's get geeky. We've been doing this for 10 minutes. See, where did that question go? Sam wants to know, what model in your trumpet do you play on?
Woo! Hello. Meet my trumpet, everybody. It's got a name, but it's not suitable to tell children. Not that you're kids. So this trumpet is a Bach Stradivarius. It's a 43 bell. This horn is very, very special to me because when I moved to New York City, I didn't, which is in 2010, a decade ago now. I didn't move to go to any specific college or school, but I wanted to study with Warren Vaché, who's been just a great mentor of mine for a long time, an inspiration. And I've been studying with him regularly, about every 2 weeks, going to a place out in New Jersey for about a year. And at that time I was playing a horn that was gifted to me by some jazz fans. I think it was a Selmer. It worked fine, but it had leaks and different things going on. So he instigated with some fans to get me a new horn, and him and I went out to Dylan's music shop in Rahway, New Jersey.
Yeah, Dylan. Hey guys.
Yeah. It's like a bunker of brass. You wouldn't know it from the outside, but the whole walls are lined. And I just, we went through every trumpet that I could find pretty much, and it was so valuable having my teacher that had been with me on my journey for the last year, listening and trying to figure out which ones had the best sound and what I could had the least struggling with. Anyway, all you asked was, what kind of horn do I play? And that's the story behind this horn, is that this is the horn that sounded the best to both me and Warren on that day, and we picked it off the wall, and I still continue to play it. I love it that it's got a big, bright, brassy sound. It's like my shotgun of sound. I also have a Bach Stradivarius that's a 37 bell, unlacquered, that I bought also from Dylan's in last year before joining the Monterey Jazz Festival tour band. I thought I just wanted something that was a little darker, a little bit smaller, so I didn't have to have the Canon, bring out the Canon in a maybe more modern jazz setting. But so between those two, I keep them both out. I keep them both out within view because that's the way to inspire yourself to practice. Get the horn out of the case. So I have 2 horns out of the case that stare at me every day, reminding me to practice.
So that is a follow-up. Is that, so 2 trumpets? Is that do you have any other ones laying around, or is it just those 2?
Well, actually, I still have the old Selmer. I got that fixed up. It lived for a little while, the Louis Armstrong House out in Queens, so that kids could check it out. And I own a flugelhorn. That's I don't play as often. I don't get the big band calls as many people, but I've had it forever. It's called A Wild Thing by a man named Flip Oakes.
Yeah.
Who lives in California. I love Flip. I grew up on the whole scene, this whole jazz scene that Flip was part of, and so we were friends, and he helped me find that. So that's what I have. Brass-wise, that's it. So I own 3. I mean, I think of like 2 kind of majors and one backup if needed. Otherwise, I'm not much of a horn collector. I'd like to put that horn in the kid's hand if they can be playing it at this point.
And also, I would assume being in New York, space is at a premium.
Yeah, there's only so much room I have here.
Yeah, well, a lot of great questions come in. Tony, speaking of New York, Tony Cadlick's saying hi.
Hi, Tony.
Hey, Tony. Yeah, we have to have him on here sometime. Well, I'll have to reach out to you. What a fabulous player. Next question comes from Paul. Wants to know, what drew you to jazz in the beginning?
Well, to be totally honest, so I started playing run of all they can get, and so really my first biggest inspirations were watching the older kids play in the jazz band in 8th, 9th grade, and then in the high school, 10th, 11th, 12th grade. My older brother played tenor saxophone in the big band, so I just looked up to them so much. My hometown, which is a place called Chilliwack in British Columbia, I talked about the jazz festival as well, but they did a really good job of giving the youth spot to play. There was a youth site where every band in the district that wanted to have a half an hour set could play one. And so our bands would always be featured, and all of the kids got access to go to the festival and see basically any band in any site at any time. So those, my biggest inspirations were not, not my parents' jazz record collection, not any of this. It was just my peers, people that I looked up to, and the local community of players that brought us all under their wings, which is such a beautiful thing. And then as I, went a little, got into high school, one of my directors, Rob Hopkins, he would put some more informed music into my ears, like the Nicholas Payton, but also traditional jazz. Kenny Ball, all them, like an English British trad jazz player. Of course, lots of Louis and other sorts of things.
And that's interesting about your playing, too, because you kind of toe that line where you'll play the traditional jazz, but then you'll also play a lot of hip stuff. And so, how do you do that? It's amazing. What's the magic? What's the secret?
Man, it continues to grow. My biggest problem is that I like trying so many different things. It's like music's like food. Just try it, and unless you have allergic reaction, just try it again, that sort of thing. So I listen to every kind of music I can kind of get into my ears, and it inspires me in different ways. And so obviously I can deviate with it, and then I come back. I think I'm grateful to have that, again, that real kind of early roots jazz tradition of understanding the basics of rhythm, melody, harmony, together foundation. And then I think about those things as I listen to different kinds of music. And then I try to find ways to fuse them together that will satisfy me. Because I didn't grow up listening to just jazz music. I was in a ska band. I like punk music. I like classic rock. I like disco punk, or pop music, whatever. I like music, good music, music with intention. So that being said, I think the tricky part for me has been making sure that my audience and all the people that have supported me along the way trust me to provide them something that is interesting, but also makes them know that I'm not like I'm still honoring where I came from, still not remembering where I came from.
Yeah. So next question comes from Dennis Johnson. Bria, love your sound. Who were your inspirations that shaped your voice?
My voice or my voices?
Your voice.
My voice. My singing voice?
Yeah, I would assume so.
Sure, okay. There are a couple of voices going on. Anyway, that's very sweet.
We can do that on the other podcast, the other side of the bell.
Yeah.
Talk about the other voices.
Yeah, exactly. More and more as the quarantine goes on. Thank you very much. That's very sweet. Similarly to growing up in the local school scene, I listen to a lot of big band. I think those are people, big band singers. Up to the top of my head, like Joe Stafford and. Blanking. I don't know why. I mean, Peggy Lee, people like that. Ella Fitzgerald was a lot, I listened to a lot of Ella Fitzgerald growing up, Billie Holiday, the classics. But I really started to dig in. Where I really started to dig in was when I discovered Anita O'Day, who is just so cool. And she's got like a rasp in her voice. And I like the way that she manipulates melodies in a really interesting jazzy way. And down that vein, I started to get into June Christie, Chris Carter. These are interesting, similar sort of singers. And same thing. I listen to different people for different things. Sarah Vaughan just has like such beautiful depth and control. Those are a few people that have inspired me along the way. And again, outside of the jazz realm, I've always loved Lauryn Hill. Ava Cassidy has a gorgeous voice. These are people that I've been inspired by.
Yeah, so in listening to you talk and also watching your other Facebook Lives, I mean, your knowledge of history and jazz singers and players and composers, and I mean, it's really incredible. I was like, do you have a photographic memory? Or like, I don't remember what I had for dinner last night, and it's really impressive.
I'm glad it comes across that way. I feel like I'm just digging, hoping that it comes out and makes sense.
Always learning. The next question comes in from Carlos, and for those of you just joining us from around the world, say hi down in the comments, show us some love. If you have a question for Bria Skonberg, go ahead and put it in the comments, and we'll get to it, hopefully. The next question comes in from Carlos Ortiz. What drove you to move to New York? Why not California, New Orleans, or another country? New York is so saturated with musicians. It was an interesting move.
True. Yeah. There are these parts of life where you go, I could have gone this way, I could have gone that way. To be honest, I wanted to move down to Southern California. Being from British Columbia, the Pacific Northwest coast, you dream of palm trees. I was obsessed with the idea of sunshine all the time. And I really wanted to move down there, but just when it came time that I was bumping my head on the ceiling in Vancouver, I had, because of meeting different musicians at festivals, I had more contacts in New York City, and my best friend, Emily Asher, who's a trombonist here, she had moved 2 years before to go to Queens, and just, it seemed like all of the pieces were pulling me in that direction. And I made a couple of, I call them dive bomb trips, just a couple days at a time to New York to get my feet wet. And immediately I just sunk into this crowd of wonderful players, did a lot of street busking, kind of this community was there that I really identified with. And it was clear that was the place to be. And I'm so glad that happened because, New York doesn't have time for a lot of BS, and my initials are BS, so I thrive on that. I think I would have been chasing the wrong things for far too long, had I gone somewhere else. Whereas here was just like, okay, especially that and studying with Warren, it made me focus, especially on the quality and the integrity of all the different things that I've want to do, and I continue to do that. It's challenging, it's challenging here, and that's what keeps me going. That's what keeps me inspired and keeps me honest, and quite honestly, keeps me unique at this point, because I met Lou Soloff really early on in my move, and he said, look, in a place like New York, like you said, there's always competition. There's going to be always somebody who plays faster, somebody who plays higher. The only way you have survival is to figure out what you have that nobody else has, and own it. And I thought about that for a couple of days, and all I could come out of it was, I think I'm the only trumpet player in New York from Chilliwack, British Columbia. And as funny as that sounds, that's what grounded me. Was like, you know what, I'm here. If I'm not at home in my safe place with all my incredible family and the spirited people, I'm going to go there and I'm going to do my very best and to be myself, to bring that joy, that spirit that was instilled in me early on, and just continue to use that to make me better, just drive me, inspire me.
Great. And shout out from Canada. We have Nathan Samuelson, who's actually another fine player from Canada. He was on the podcast a few episodes back, so he's sharing some love. And yes, a lot of fans in the comments. Matthew Collins from Sydney, one of our biggest podcast fans and a big fan of yours, says, "Hi Bria, love your new album. I'm curious as to whether you notice any significant developments in your trumpet playing when you began focusing on singing, or whether they are two totally separate instruments for you."
Yeah, I cannot almost not put into words how much I support. Everybody should be able to work on your singing. And actually, I don't like singing. I don't like the S word because it scares people away from doing it. Verbalizing your ideas, because the trumpet, this right here, is a tool. It's a mechanism. All it is an amplifier for your own ideas. It's not going to make music happen on its own. So ultimately, if I can, you want to be able to work on seamlessly applying that, whatever ideas you have into your instrument. Fun fact, I loved singing before I played trumpet, but I was too shy to do it openly. So by joining the school band, I think it gave me a community of friends and some opportunities to perform that led me to do that. Other things that are very, maybe obvious is that, as trumpet, I often play the melody. That means that I want to learning the lyrics can help me internalize melodies. The breath support is paramount. Both of those are similar. And strangely, my trumpet range and my vocal range are pretty much exactly the same. So I work on those in tandem. Because I perform on both, I've worked on figuring out where both meet tone-wise. What are some finding or writing songs that can act as vehicles to show them both off in their best light, and quite honestly create kind of dramatic, sometimes contrast between the two is a fun thing to play with. So yeah, from a musical point, from an ear training standpoint, it's absolutely crucial. I recommend everybody giving it a shot, whether or not you perform in front of other people.
No, and that brings up a good point, because you said you were a singer first, but you were kind of scared. How did you get out of that? How did you get out of your comfort zone, stage fright, any kind of things like that you experienced?
Most definitely. I mean, as I said, having a group of friends, I guess we kind of just sing a little bit to ourselves, and then eventually they pushed me into trying out for the school play, and I did. My big breakout moment was at grade 9, singing for the school musical. And after that point, I started to take more chances. I didn't get over my nerves right away. I was still scared to do it, but I tried out for the jazz choir. I would sing with a local big band. To be honest, the journey with conquering nerves was a really long one for me. Many of my most incredible professional moments have been the most terrifying in my life, least enjoyable. But I always got through them. I knew that if I took the risk, you get the reward if you get through them. And then now that I've been performing for so long, I'm starting to get to a place where I feel comfortable in almost any situation, and that's such a beautiful thing. It's such a beautiful thing to be free finally of that. It's something about being nervous. I think what I realize now is that it's all very egocentric. It's about focusing on yourself more than focusing on what's happening around you. If there's a moment where I feel like, oh, I'm scared I'm going to screw up, I look at my friend Darian playing the drums and go, man, Darian is just killing it right now. Or look at Chris on the piano. He just sounds so great. And I just think about filling that room with love. And then I look at the people in the audience and how much they're enjoying it. And then, by the time you do that, you're like, gosh darn it, I should enjoy this too. So those are some of the mental things that I have gone through as far as conquering nerves, realizing just it's just a very ego-driven thing to be that self-conscious, but also that physically, taking a breath, holding a breath, slowly releasing it, just the idea of calming your heart rate, breathing along with your heartbeat so that it slows down, will just physically stop some of those, those different side effects of that. The adrenaline that makes your hand shake, that makes you get dehydrated, all of that, which just sets you back. Breathing will help set you free.
Do you do any techniques or exercises for your breathing, both for trumpet and for your vocals?
For breathing, well, I try to get exercise every day. Don't smoke, get exercise. Dun, da, da. All of these things are, of course, important. Just like an instrument, you want to keep it clean, right? You got to keep your lungs clean. It's working for you, especially in the long run. I have, through the quarantine, I've been trying to do some meditative, so even just 10 minutes a day of controlled breathing to focus my mind, not more than my breath. But I will, I think between those things, if when I go into a practice session, the first thing that has to be clear are my airwaves, so calm that down.
Great. We are here live with Bria Skonberg. Show us some love in the comments. Show us where you're watching from around the world. I mean, we covered the whole planet already, but it's still great to see a lot of people that have seen you live. Bria, Terry saw you in Hershey in 2017. Great show. Rochester. Where did Rochester go? Rochester Jazz Festival. Bob saw you and really enjoyed your set. Great stuff. Show us some love in the comments and let us know where you're viewing, if you saw Bria somewhere. It's always great to connect on here. The next question comes from Sam and wants to know more about Warren Vaché. What were some of the best tips that he gave you?
Warren, man. What's interesting about Warren is, I was in love with his jazz playing. That's how I got to know him and his music. But when I started studying with him, he's like, look, kid, you want to play jazz, you listen to Blue Mitchell, listen to these records, work on that. I'll teach you how to play the trumpet. And so my time with Warren and into what I do right now was all technique based, which is good because I actually didn't have a private lessons teacher until I got to university. So I've always been kind of a bag of raw materials with more refinement needed. So Warren set me up with, method books, Schlossberg, Clark Studies, all those ones, and helped me understand the importance of practicing with a metronome. I practiced diligently with a metronome, little bits at a time. He says it's patience. Obviously, patience is the number one. There's no shortcuts. Kid, there are no shortcuts in trumpet playing. Trust me, I've been doing this. I'm in my 50s. I'm finally figuring it out. He's been around forever, and he knows he's not going to say you're going to get this next week and that'll make you my star student. He's like, it's just going to, little bits every day add up. And we were, a sweet combination because I have a lot of kind of energy and I would get worked up over exercises. He would just say, be able to stop me and be like, just relax. That's when things like, we have a good rapport, it's not that hard, but he could see that I was just getting so frustrated with the minutia of something when I just needed to kind of give it some breathing space, step away, come back, take the rest, So that's pacing, I think, is something that he really, pacing yourself, diligent little bits of practice add up, and trusting your ear to be the guide, you play this. Okay, how did that sound? Did that sound good? Focus on what's coming out of the other side of the bell, instead of just not just what's on the page that you're trying to nail.
Wonderful advice. And do you still check in with Warren for lessons? Yeah. Yeah,
I'll go out to Rahway every now and then and play some duets I did back in February, and now we just, every week I'll call him and make sure he's okay.
check in. Wonderful. Great player. Lots of people checking in. This is awesome. And I've got to combine questions here. One comes from Nathan, who I talked about earlier in Canada. And Nathan just had a birthday the other day. So happy birthday, Nathan. Do you have a specific routine to keep your chops up? And I'll kind of combine that with Chuck Sciorba, who's another good friend in Washington, D.C., saw you present at George Mason, and he wanted to know what your warm-up is. So maybe you can kind of meld those into one question there.
Yep, those are great questions. And I have established a routine that works for me, and I think I need to write down and do a whole separate thing on a method that I've got coming together. A lot of it came from Warren's influence. I structure my warm-up and my routine around the idea of a pyramid with the different aspects of trumpet playing, the technical stuff. So, there are many different things that we are doing at the same time. So for me to be able to isolate and address each separately has been very beneficial. So the pyramid, the bottom of the pyramid, air. Number one is air. Like we said, what do? I make sure my air passages are clean. I get out. I make sure I'm taking deep breaths. That's the number one thing. Embouchure. Embouchure is the next step of the pyramid. It's the next point of contact with the trumpet. And in order to get warmed up and routine-wise, especially as we are on the road often, not right now, but on the road, and you can't get the horn on the face, I focus a lot on isometric exercises too. So before I even put the horn on my face, I get my air. I'll do a little bit of free buzzing. Or take a pen or pencil, kind of hold it between my chops a little bit, or get a straw, a little thing there. Something that kind of starts to center and focus these muscles, warm up these muscles in here. On occasion I'll do some sort of sirens. We know this. That to me is linking air and embouchure. So I start with that. The next thing that's been important, my friend Philip Dizek, who is now the jazz professor at UNT, an awesome friend of mine. He just, we'd get together and jam for a long time, but I would secretly take lessons from him. That's really what was happening. He introduced me to the Bill Adams routine. So I've pieced together bits of that. I blow through the tubes, most definitely. That was a game changer for me. Is blowing through, just taking the lead pipe out of your horn. I will use a metronome, and I will put the metronome for that on 60, and I blow the tube for 4 beats, off for beats, 4 beats, on for 4 beats, 4 beats. I'll do that about 30 times, and then I go to the next partial, through the different partials. This is a crash course in basically my routine and the way that I go through everything. Up to that point, blowing through each one methodically, just layering it, air, embouchure, put the lead pipe back in, and then go through basically, not just lip slurs, but those sorts of things, a little more controlled. This is, again, the blast-through version. Just linking air and embouchure with the instrument. I'll do that for a while, and then long tones, and then I do long tones, also very boring, but within a metronome. Metronome is key in all of this, resting for the same amount that I play in between each, spidering from G all the way into pedals, all the way up to high G, high G. Next part of the pyramid is tongue. I focus on the aspect that's in here. For that, I will do either Belk studies or Arbin's, just I-E-I-E-I-Es with a metronome, I-E-I-E-I-E-I-E-I-E, practicing that away from the instrument and then with the instrument. Again, in my metronome, I keep a log now that I bump it up every day. I mean, let's be honest, maybe I do this 4 times a week or 5 times a week just to balance it. If I'm lucky, I'll deal with the flexibility of the tongue, and then I'll deal with articulation. Same isometric stuff, 2 2 2 2 2 2 with a metronome, 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2. Away from the instrument, and then on the instrument into double tonguing, tuku tukus, different metronome marking. And the point of with the metronome is that it might be at 70 today, tomorrow it's at 71, the next day it's at 72. you miss a day, you probably have to stay at 72. Always trying to just incrementally inch up. Articulation, and then the next bit is dexterity, getting these digits to work there. For this, I will do usually Clark studies, some any method in there. I'm currently on the these old faithful things that they are. I'll do it once with the horn off the face, just focusing on the fingers, once with the horn on the face. And then finally, with this idea with the pyramid is that you have fire, embouchure, tongue, dexterity, and at the very top is music.
Finally get to music.
That's the goal. I mean,
yes.
Those are all the things that you have to do in order to line up to play this thing, which is a miracle. And then you want to improvise on top of it, forget about it. So like make up something, you make up something. But then I will play an etude, usually like a Charlier or something that's through the Clark characteristics that brings all those elements together. And that is my routine that gets me to about an hour. That's about an hour-long routine that challenges incrementally all of those different pieces individually and together. And I will continue to find exercises that, that keep me interested. First of all, I'll continue to challenge. For my warm-up, it's the same pyramid, just with less time usually. Again, if I just get to the gig and there's only 25 minutes or less, I'll just kind of tackle those things and try to troubleshoot as I play what I hear, especially with the tubes and the long tones. Is my sound fuzzy? Well, then do I have to relax a little bit more? Is it sound first? Is my tongue, just checking in with all those little bits and pieces to quickly troubleshoot what's not lining up that day. Because let's be honest, that's what playing trumpet, there are inconsistencies that you want to kind of iron out before you get to the gig and feel prepared. I think that hit everything. Once that's the technique. After that, I'll get into music. I'll play. Then I'll get into kind of more jazz related stuff. Maybe patterns. Maybe right now I'm this quarantine. I finally bought the Charlie Parker Omnibook, so I'm hacking my way through Charlie Parker solos, just trying to learn and keep music going.
That's actually.
Yeah.
As I said, it's a good segue. The next question Paul was asking about what you're doing, some of the positives that have come out of the quarantine in terms of music collaboration with others and with fans. So what kind of stuff are you working on? Any projects, things like that?
Yeah. Well, in many ways, it's been such a really inspiring time. It just, immediately started to reach out to people. I use the Acapella app that is mostly available through iPhones to layer. And if you go to my Facebook or Instagram and kind of scroll through, you'll see all those. That's one way that I've reached out to people that I've honestly never even shared a stage with, and yet we create something special together. Next week, I'm part of what's called the Act for Music Festival. I had to come up with a 30-minute video set, to submit in advance, but it's like, okay, what do I do for 30 minutes that anybody wants to hear? I don't even want to hear solo trumpet for 30 minutes. So I've been working on, piecing together some things, playing and singing a little bit, playing a little bit of ukulele. Those are things that I've just been trying to work on. I definitely miss my band so much because I feel like, especially with the music on Nothing Never Happens, I finally got to a place where I could articulate a little more clearly, and also, the relationship that I have with my band members to know what kind of vibes we're going for in this music. It's not all it's not horrendously difficult harmonically, but there are just so many little details and textures that come in that don't get communicated with solo trumpet. So I've missed that a lot. But as far as ways that I'm staying proactive, there's that, and also, Facebook. I've been doing these Facebook Live sessions that are just like lighthearted, joy, jam, sing-alongs, and that's been satisfying for me. Also realizing how much other people just need that sort of thing right now.
Yeah, we're getting a lot of love in the comments. Great to see so many friends down there. Christoph Gomez is checking in, says hi. Oh, Alan Quinn. Hey, buddy. Alan Quinn says hi. Hi, Bria. Hi, Jon. And a question for you. He doesn't want to ask me a question. I don't know why. Is there any artist, singer, or instrumentalist that you'd love to do a duet album with?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. A couple of dream projects. Um, well, I always just keep fishing. I throw out there, Harry Connick Jr., call me someday. Someday. Then I just, talking about a musician that pulls together the New Orleans style with contemporary styles in a way. I admire his music so much. But a couple of artists that I'm really excited about that I would love to collaborate with someday are Pedrito Martinez is a Cuban, New York, living, but Cuban percussionist who I think is just awesome. Last year on the Monterey Jazz Festival tour, there were some people, just like it was a beautiful group of souls. And Jamison Ross is a drummer and vocalist. I think he's so special and he's so beautiful that, so at some point I'll hope to work with him. There are some, fantastic females. I think Aubrey Logan cracks me up. Those are some of the dreamers. Oh, Stefan Rambel is an incredible kind of Romanian swing gypsy jazz guitarist. We've done a little bit of collaborating along the way, but I have a feeling that those seeds will be planted for a little farther down. But I'd be curious to hear your thoughts too, like who, throw those at me here and there and tell me who you think would be an interesting fit. And
that kind of goes back to the previous question. It is an amazing time in that a lot of these artists are not on the road, so you can do those kinds of things that you wouldn't normally do because you're all going your own separate places. Actually, speaking of Aubrey, I'm going to just take a moment to plug Aubrey Logan, fantastic singer and trombone player. She'll be featured on our other podcast, The Trombone Corner, that we started up. Woo! And she will be coming up in a few weeks. We already interviewed her, and it's a killer interview, as you can imagine. She's got so much personality and talent. It was great to hear her name because she is one of those very special musicians out there. We have time for just a few more questions here before we wrap up. But show us some love in the comments, share with your friends, and just for a point of logistics, this whole Q&A will be posted on our Facebook page after this. So if you missed the beginning, some of the questions, it'll be there. You can rewind and check out all the great questions were asked and answered. Ben Strickland, good buddy from East Coast Trumpets, he's asking what your favorite mute is for traditional jazz.
For traditional jazz, I'm a plunger girl all the way, and not just because I'm cheap, but plunger is by far my favorite expressive vehicle. However, I don't have the stem here. I just pulled out some of these mutes from my Facebook Live, but this is a mute that Clinton Baker, an awesome brass and beyond player from the Bay Area, gave me a while ago. It's an old Shastock cup mute. I love these because they've got the adjustable bell, and you can get really tight in. Oh, shit. Sound a little bit like Charlie Shavers.
Yes. Oh, Charlie. Yeah.
Charlie's the best. Charlie Shavers is like one of my absolute heroes. Technically, John Kirby Sextet is amazing. This is another one of my favorite mutes I got from a guy named John Eric Kelso. Awesome. Amazing hero trumpet player. It's a wooden solo tone. I don't play it very often, except when I sub for him in the Nighthawks, but it's that old school kind of big band 30s, but the wooden mutes I think are really special. I think wooden mutes are really special.
Great answer. And then just as a follow-up to that, could you show how you practice doing your plunger technique?
Practice. Actually, I'll use this one. I have so many plungers. By the way, I sell plungers on my website. They're durable. I found blue ones. I have a red, a blue. This plunger was given to me. See the years on this one. Yeah.
Woo, yeah.
Woo. This was given me by the lead trumpet player in the Dal Richards Orchestra, which is a band I played with in Vancouver. Dal was Canada's king of swing. And I played in it for several years before I moved to New York. And the lead trumpet player, Derry Byrne, was just awesome. And this is such a gift, such a gift, the real old crusty plunger from my favorite lead player. Anyway, how do I play it? I think experimenting with sounds void of judgment is one of the best ways that you can start to create your own voice. I put it in front of the bell like this. I don't have a hole in there. I don't know. I just haven't kind of gone that route. I think you just have to play with it, understanding how this comes out and really how it emulates your real voice. That's why the Plunger is amazing. It's just like it gives you a vocal quality. So how can you tell a story with that, like as if you're saying words? Of course, I like to do a lot of old school growling too. Not flutter tongue, which is fun, but growling. In that vein, I do a lot of that on my song "So Is the Day," and if you haven't seen it yet, Bach, Stradivarius Bach Brass is there's a contest right now about if you can play through my solo and send a copy of you playing my solo on "So Is the Day," which I provided a transcription for. Give that a shot, and there are couple different levels of prizes, including a Zoom lesson with me where we can get all into that sort of stuff, and the third prize is, hey, valve oil and microfiber cleaning cloths.
Yeah, who doesn't love that, right?
Yeah.
Folks, is that on Instagram, or is there a website? What's the best place to get that info?
It's pinned to the top of my Facebook page. Bach Brass, of course, has it on theirs. Instagram, I have that there. If you have any questions, look it up there. But between myself and just Bach Conn-Selmer, you should be able to find a listing for that, including a link to the transcription and the music video.
Awesome. Mark was asking, just as a follow-up to your demonstration there, what's your technique for growling? You talked about you don't flutter tongue, right?
I use it as a device. But I am just grunting and groaning into the horn, and it has to come from the gut. That's what I'm doing. Which I think is how I'm able to keep such a positive, sunny disposition, is because I get it out. I I let the bad air on out, as they say. That way, it's just great growling. And if you've ever seen me perform "So Is the Day," I usually do it near the end of the concert. No spoilers there, because it's kind of hard to bounce back from once I've growled for 6 minutes, and then it's hard to kind of sing a pretty ballad after that. And that's why most people don't recommend doing, old traditional growling, is because it hurts your voice a bit. But I just think you can't get a sound any other way.
Well, and then you brought up "So Is the Day," and I told you we had a lot of love. People have seen your shows live, and one of the questions was, well, what do you do to put together a show when you go out on tour and stuff to make sure it's entertaining and going to hold people's attention and that sort of thing? Yeah.
This has been something that I've been more focused on in the last couple of years, especially, it's a totally different thing. If you do a show with 2 sets with an intermission versus a 90-minute concert, the pacing is very different. So I think about the story that I want to tell. I think about the emotional kind of peak. I think about, I want there to be substance of history, but I want to make sure I communicate my own original material as well. I use the idea of drama quite a bit. I like to play songs that contrast each other kind of directly back and forth, or back to back, to make people feel comfortable, then maybe not uncomfortable, and then bring them in again, and then hit them over the head with something big and flashy. I plan those out in a way that makes it feel like a show, and passes the attention around again to the different people in the band. So I think in terms of drama, and I think in terms of density. So for example, my last album, there's some funk and rock songs on it, but how do I establish both a sound palette that people are prepared for that? If I come out strong with some of those things, then it's hard to reel back. So it's almost like a tasting menu at a restaurant. You have to think about how to pace things and stylistically. Especially, and weave a story, because I want to do so many different kinds of music. I do Louis Armstrong, I do Leonard Cohen, I do Queen, and then I do, a bunch of my original music too. And if it's, spaghetti on the wall, none of it's actually going to stick. So, yeah, I think about density, I think about pacing, I think about where I'm going to speak, where I'm not going to speak, and yeah, use humor along the way. I just like to take people kind of on an emotional ride. So all that to say is it is intentional, and I don't do the same show every night. There are songs that I think have similar effects. If this is the bright, fast, upswing song, there are, 4 or 5 songs that I can change in and out of that based on what it is that we're inspired by during that month. But I have to keep it fresh for myself and the band too.
Wonderful. This has been so much fun, Bria.
Yeah, thank you. Me too. It just flies by.
You have so much energy. I don't know what your secret is. Like, is it coffee? Is it just...
You know what? I think, especially in these days, like any sort of interaction that I get to have with somebody, and when people ask questions, it invites these variables that that are the unknown, and I think that's just what excites me the most. So thank you guys. It inspires me to get to speak to more, especially trumpet geeky people.
get a little geeky. So yeah. It's been an honor, and you already mentioned Instagram, Facebook. What's the best place to have people follow you? Is it any and all, or
whatever platform works for you? You know what? I don't use Twitter very much. I don't like to follow. There's just too much junk over there. So Facebook is the best. I do 2 live streams weekly on Wednesdays and Sundays. Instagram is great. That's the same too. Those are generally the best. I have a mailing list that I'll put dedicated e-blasts out to every once in a while, and you can sign up for that. And otherwise, yeah, just again Google Bria Trumpet. It's easier than spelling my last name, and you'll find me. You'll find me on whatever platform is comfortable for you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Bria. It's been a real pleasure.
Yeah, and hopefully you see me at Bob Reeves Music in the far not too distant future. I want to be in that room hanging out.
Yeah, come up. We'll hang, or we'll go hang at Dylan Music next time we can come out there. So yeah, once it's safe to do so.
Exactly.
So, thank you so much, Bria.
My pleasure.
All right. And thank you all for watching. It's been so much fun. Like Bria was saying, it's been so awesome connecting with people from around the world. So I hope wherever you are you're safe and healthy. A few notes coming up tomorrow for you trumpet players and horn players and pretty much anyone who loves music. Jerry Hay will be joining us to talk about Sea Wind and Michael Jackson and Quincy Jones and my favorite DuckTales cartoon. Jerry's done just about everything. So join us tomorrow at 2 p.m. And then on Friday for our low brass brothers and sisters, we have David Rayano, principal trombone of the Los Angeles Philharmonic. So make sure you follow us on Facebook. Tell your friends about this. We're having fun every day as much as we can. It's crazy time. So the least we can do is hang out and chat and talk some music and stuff. So again, thank you so much. Be safe, be healthy, and let's go practice a little bit, shall we? Bye-bye.